there's a hard truth we rarely admit. You can spend an entire year setting goals, writing plans, watching self-help videos, and still remain stuck. Not because you didn't try, but because you've been avoiding. Avoiding the silence, avoiding the unanswered questions, avoiding the moment you have to face yourself when no one's watching and there's nothing left to justify. And that's when life begins to blur, not because you've failed, but because you're living as if you've never truly awakened. We often search for a sign to change, a spark to begin, a reason to act, but the more we wait, the further we drift from who we really are. Stoicism doesn't teach you to chase what's outside. It brings you back to reason, to presence, and to the inner autonomy you've always had. Because every deep transformation starts within, when you accept what's true and stop blaming your circumstances. Now is the time to face what you need to hear, not because it's easy, but because it's essential. 1. Stop waiting for others to see your worth. Have you ever quietly hoped someone would enter your life and recognize all the silent effort you've made? A boss who sees the potential you've yet to show. A mentor who hands you an opportunity. A companion who shows up just in time to pull you out of loneliness. The belief that someone will choose you keeps hope alive, but it's also what drains your faith when no one ever comes. The more you wait for someone to validate you, the more you unconsciously deny the value that already exists within you. And so, you delay action, delay change, delay your entire life just to earn someone else's approval. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be indifferent or disconnected. On the contrary, it teaches you to clearly separate what belongs to you from what doesn't. Recognition is someone else's feeling. And you cannot control anyone's emotions, but you can fully control whether you live in alignment with your abilities, dignity, and personal responsibility. Being chosen by someone else will never matter more than choosing yourself every day. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste the rest of your life worrying about what others think." I didn't just read that as philosophy. I took it as a wake-up call that maybe I'd spent too many years living as if I were competing in a contest that no one was judging. Every task I did came with a hidden expectation. Someone will notice, someone will praise me, someone will reassure me I'm on the right path. But eventually, I had to admit, if I still need others to define my value, then that value never really belonged to me. There's a kind of freedom that only shows up when you stop living as if you're applying to be in someone else's life. When you do the right thing, not because someone is watching, but because you've chosen to live by principle. When you speak truth, do what matters, and stand still in the silence of loneliness without wavering. No one shows up, no one applauds, and still you move forward because you no longer need to be seen in order to truly live. The world may never understand the pain you've endured, the choices you've had to make, the silent battles you've fought. But that doesn't make you any less valuable. Your worth doesn't lie in the eyes of others. It lies in one question. Today, are you living in alignment with what you believe is right? If so, you are enough. You don't need anyone's recognition. You don't need someone to see your worth, because you are the first person who must see it in the mirror. And in that very moment, when you stop waiting to be given permission and choose to step forward, you are no longer asking to live. You are in command, and that is where true value begins to form. 2. You're not tired from doing too much. You're tired from being scattered everywhere. There are days you end feeling drained, even though nothing truly bad happened. You didn't work twice as hard as others. You didn't face some major crisis, but your mind crashes the moment the afternoon begins. Your body isn't tired, but your head feels heavy, hazy, and mute. It's not the exhaustion of overexertion, it's the fatigue of being pulled in too many directions without fully landing in any of them. We live in an age where attention is the most precious resource and also the one most fragmented every day. Each time you check your phone in the middle of work, each time you reply to a message mid-meeting, each time you tune into mindless gossip, you give away a piece of your already limited focus. And by the day's end, you're not tired from doing too much. You're tired because you were never fully present with anything. You've lived the day as if you were living multiple lives in parallel, none of which actually belong to you. Seneca once warned, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." When your mind is scattered across too many things, you lose presence and with it, the sense of being connected to yourself. You may check off every item on your to-do list, but if throughout the day you never paused, took a deep breath, placed a hand on your heart, and asked, "What am I living by today?" then the energy you spent was merely reactive, not intentional. That wasn't a lived day. That was a day that passed you by. Stoic philosophy doesn't ask you to do less. It teaches you to do what's right. Right for the moment. Right for your aim. Right for your nature. When you approach one task with complete focus, you don't just do it better, you restore your inner cohesion. You stop breaking yourself into fragments, and in that stillness, you begin to grow strong again. You don't need to become hyper-productive to feel like you're progressing. You simply need to gather the scattered pieces of yourself so that each hour you live, you are no longer the person who only reacts, but the one who chooses to act. The exhaustion won't vanish overnight, but it will no longer have power over you. Because for the first time in many days, you are finally present in your own life. 3. No action equals no result. No matter how you feel, we are taught that emotions are our compass, that we should listen to our heart and wait for inspiration before we act. But the truth is, if you wait until you feel ready, motivated, or light-hearted, you might never start at all, because those feelings don't always arrive, and they are not prerequisites for action. Emotions change with the weather, with sleep, with a passing message. But action, when guided by reason, can remain steady through every emotional storm. There are mornings when you wake up and everything feels foggy, and the last thing you want to do is get out of bed. Afternoons when you sit at your desk, mind blank, no inspiration, no belief, no drive. But if you let emotion decide in place of action, you'll live in a loop where every goal remains a concept and every plan dies in silence. Stoicism doesn't dismiss emotion, but it teaches us to place action above emotion. Epictetus once said, "We are not disturbed by events, but by the views we take of them." And that also applies to what we feel. You may feel heavy, but that doesn't mean you must stop. You may doubt yourself, but that doesn't forbid you from completing today's task. Every time you choose to act, even while confused or unsure, you prove to yourself that you are not ruled by what is fleeting. I used to wait until I felt perfect to start writing, wait for clarity to return to training, wait for life to get easier before I dared to change. But that waiting made me delay every opportunity passing through the present moment. Eventually, I realized, not feeling ready doesn't mean you can't begin, and lacking inspiration doesn't mean you can't move forward. Because it is action that creates momentum, not the other way around. If you're waiting for the want to show up, maybe you need to start first and let the feeling catch up later. You don't need to feel perfect to begin doing what's right. You just need to begin, and each small action will slowly become your inner strength. Results don't come from thinking, dreaming, or inspiration. They only come from action. And action, in every situation, remains within your control no matter how you feel. 4. Discomfort is not a sign. you're on the wrong path. We grew up in a world of convenience, where discomfort is seen as abnormal, an error in the system. A new pair of shoes that rubs your heel is called defective. An anxious morning is labeled negative. A relationship that's no longer fun is quickly questioned, and somewhere along the way, we started believing if something feels uncomfortable, it must mean we're wrong, off course, or should stop. But if you stop every time it gets hard, you'll never pass the initial barrier, the one where most people quit. Think back to your first day in the gym. Muscles stiff, breath short, sweat dripping. It wasn't pleasant. Yet that discomfort was the sign you were activating muscles long dormant. If you want a strong body but avoid the soreness of training, you're lying to yourself with the fantasy of an easy path that doesn't exist. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That truth applies not only to his battlefield, but to the silent struggles within each of us. Every time you feel anxious starting a new job, tense when speaking up for what you believe, or lonely leaving a toxic environment, these aren't signs of misdirection. They're signs of forward motion. Discomfort is not the enemy. It's a guide. It points to the areas you've never entered, the spaces you've never trained, the places you will grow if you have the patience to stay. If you can learn not to run from those first feelings, but instead stand still, observe, understand, and continue, you'll discover something deep. What once made you uncomfortable is often what transforms you most. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be numb or endure needlessly. It teaches you to see discomfort for what it is, an opportunity to grow stronger, calmer, more self-possessed. You cannot grow by doing only what's easy, saying only what's safe, and living only smooth days. Real growth is always bought with temporary unease, but only for a short while. Move through it and you'll see. You no longer fear those feelings. You've mastered yourself not because you're always comfortable, but because you're no longer ruled by fleeting discomfort. So next time discomfort visits, don't turn back too soon. It may be the clearest sign yet that you're on the right path. You're just not used to the stronger version of you that's emerging. 5. Not everyone who leaves you is a loss. Some people enter your life as if they're meant to stay forever. They were the one you shared every thought with, the one who made you laugh in the dark days, the one who made you feel seen, understood, and at home. But then, at some point, they change. Or you do. Or both slowly grow distant in a long, silent fade. And they leave not loudly, not with regret, just gone. The first feeling is always emptiness. You wonder, what did I do wrong? Why did it change? Weren't they supposed to stay? But here's a truth: you must learn to live a mature life. Not everyone who leaves you is a loss. Some people leave and it's a release. We often mistake longevity for goodness. That someone has walked beside us for years must mean they still understand and care for us as they once did. But time doesn't automatically create compatibility. Some relationships seem close but are nothing more than habit. Some old friends, when you meet again, require effort just to maintain a connection when deep down you're no longer who they once knew and they're no longer who you now need. Stoic philosophy invites us to observe things as they are, no coloring, no illusion. Epictetus once said, "When someone is hurting you, recognize that they are doing what they believe is right. Your job is not to judge, but to respond with reason." You don't need to resent those who leave. You don't need to beg anyone to stay. The only task is to ask yourself rationally, does their presence still nourish me? Or is it just a rope keeping me tied to the past? Many people spend too long grieving a relationship that no longer holds real value. They forget. They too deserve a space that's pure, a mind free of confusion, a heart unbruised by repeated disappointment. And to gain that space, sometimes you must accept that someone's exit isn't an ending, it's a cleansing, a natural pruning along the path of growth. You don't need to hold on to everyone just to avoid loneliness. Temporary solitude is far more bearable than being trapped in a relationship that erodes your self-worth. And don't fear you won't find someone else. When you live in truth, when you stop pretending to keep someone around, the right people find their way not because you need them to fill a void, but because you are whole enough to connect from honesty. So if someone leaves, let them go. No bitterness, no begging, no regret. Because if their absence gives you more peace, it's not a loss, it's a release. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for your life is to let a door close so the right things finally have a chance to enter. 6. Boundaries aren't distance. They're how you protect yourself from losing yourself. There are times in life when exhaustion creeps in without a clear reason. It's not because work is overwhelming or because of any big event. It's because every day you smile while hurting inside. You say, "I'm fine," when you clearly need space. You keep saying yes to invites, favors, and demands beyond your capacity just to avoid disappointing others. And bit by bit, you trade your inner peace to preserve external relationships. That's not kindness. That's silent self-destruction. Many people confuse being compassionate with being boundaryless. They fear that saying no will upset others, that honesty might hurt someone, that stepping back will make them seem cold. But in trying not to be misunderstood by others, they end up misunderstanding themselves. They try to please everyone, only to end up with nothing left for themselves. Eventually they learn, without boundaries, even goodness becomes a burden. Boundaries aren't walls. They are lines that define what is yours and what isn't. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what we control and what we don't. You can't control what others think, feel, or how they react. But you can control what you accept, what you allow, and how you protect your inner steadiness. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. When you draw clear boundaries, you're not rejecting people. You're preserving the most intact parts of yourself. I used to fear setting limits. I thought if I were generous enough, people would appreciate and respect me more. But reality taught me the opposite. When you lack boundaries, others define you for you. They decide you're always available, always agreeable, always accommodating. Not because they're malicious, but because you said nothing. And that silence becomes an open invitation for repeated intrusion. Boundaries don't make you distant, they make you honest. Honest with yourself first, and only then with others. When you dare to say no at the right time, you're saying yes to balance. When you step away from a toxic conversation, you create room for something healthier to enter. When you stop trying to hold on to everyone, you begin learning how to hold on to yourself. Boundaries don't create separation, they create clarity. They let you be seen not as someone who always endures, but as someone who knows what nourishes and what depletes them. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't to keep enduring, but to draw a line, reminding yourself you too deserve protection from the very things that make you lose yourself. 7. Everything you consume is quietly shaping you. We often think of consumption as eating, shopping, or spending money. But in truth, every day you consume far more. You consume people's words, the images you scroll past online, the music playing during your drive, the book you choose before bed, even the seemingly harmless conversations in the office. Every piece of information that enters your mind, even for a few seconds, leaves a trace. And over time, those traces accumulate into thoughts, habits, and eventually shape who you are becoming. If you start your day scrolling through negative news, arguments, or content that provokes anger or anxiety, don't be surprised if you feel drained, irritable, or unfocused. If you surround yourself with people who constantly complain, criticize, or plant seeds of doubt, eventually you'll start doubting yourself too. And if you let your mind drift toward the easy, the sensational, the shallow, then shallowness is what will begin to rule you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, what you think, what you hear, what you focus on, you gradually become. If you want to live with calm, clarity, and depth, you must consciously choose what you allow your mind to consume. You must treat your mind like a garden. Don't let weeds grow unchecked. Don't let trash from the outside pile up. And don't let what is ugly block the light that nurtures what's good in you. And the truth is, the quality of your mind cannot be separated from the quality of the mental food you ingest. The more aware you are of what you're watching, listening to, or thinking about, the more control you have over your growth. Not through extremism or detachment from the world, but through clarity and discernment. Because in the end, you don't become what you wish for, you become what you repeat silently, every day, every hour. Be selective about the social media you follow. Rethink the content you consume on autopilot. Question the stories, the words, the emotions being passed around. Don't let yourself become a lidless cup, one that anyone can pour anything into. Be the gatekeeper of your own mind. Because if you don't control what you consume, it will control you in ways quieter, deeper, and longer lasting than you realize. 8. Time isn't something you lose, it's something you're giving away. People often complain that time passes too fast, that they've lost a morning cleaning the house, lost an afternoon in a pointless meeting, lost a year in a relationship that led nowhere. But the truth is, time doesn't just disappear. It doesn't slip away like coins through a torn pocket. It's something you give away minute by minute. And more importantly, most of your time isn't stolen. It's unconsciously handed out to things unworthy of it. Each time you scroll your phone for an hour just to avoid emptiness, you're giving away time. Each time you say yes to a meeting you don't want, just because you're afraid to say no, you're giving away time. Each time you argue pointlessly to prove yourself right, even though nothing changes, you're giving away time. No one forces you. No one takes it from you. You're the one choosing, though often, choosing unconsciously. Seneca once wrote a wake-up call titled "On the Shortness of Life," in which he said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And once you understand this, you stop blaming outside forces like work, obligations, or society. Instead, you begin asking, what am I giving my precious time to? And is it truly worth it? Stoic philosophy always places us in the role of the gatekeeper. We can't control the length of our life, but we can fully control how we spend each moment. No one knows how much time they have left to live, but everyone can choose how to live the time they've been given. And if you don't consciously choose, the world with its noise, expectations, and distractions will choose for you. Look back at the past week. How many moments did you live fully? How many conversations did you truly listen to? How much work did you complete with full focus? And how many hours slipped by trying to please others, chasing the unnecessary, delaying action, or pursuing something you already know is meaningless? You can't stretch time, but you can make it richer, more meaningful, more memorable. That doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being more aware, more selective, more courageous in saying no. Because every moment you let pass unconsciously is a piece of life you can never get back. And a short life lived in awareness is far more complete than a long life spent in confusion. Time doesn't just flow away. It lives wherever you place it. So place it somewhere that truly matters. 9. Not all advice is worth listening to. You're standing at a crossroads, unsure whether to move forward or stop. Immediately, a friend says, "Just do it. Take the risk. Maybe it'll change your life." Another warns, "Forget its safety first." Then you go online, scroll past hundreds of videos offering life experience from people who've never lived your life, but speak as if they know you better than you know yourself. The result? You're pulled in all directions by advice that's contradictory, repetitive, vague, and emotional. Instead of gaining clarity, you feel more confused. We live in an age where anyone can give advice, yet no one bears responsibility for the outcome. But what's more dangerous is this. If you listen to too many voices, you'll stop hearing your own. Every piece of advice, whether from a loved one, an expert, or a famous figure, must be examined before being applied. Not with cynicism, but with self-governance and reason-core Stoic principles. Epictetus taught, first, learn to distinguish what you can control, then, focus only on that. The same applies to advice. You can't control what people say, but you can control what you absorb. Not because you're arrogant or stubborn, but because you understand. Not everyone understands you enough to offer advice that fits you. Someone who failed in business might tell you to never take risks, but that advice comes from fear, not truth. Someone who's never practiced discipline might tell you to just relax. But that comes from avoidance, not wisdom. Some advice sounds right, but comes from a limited mind, outdated experience, or distorted beliefs. And if you absorb too much without thinking, you'll carry those same limitations into your own life. What you need isn't more advice, but wiser selection. Listen, but don't believe immediately. Observe the life of the one giving the advice. Do they live by the values you respect? Do they practice what they preach? More importantly, does what they say make you clearer and stronger? Advice only has value if it awakens your inner strength, not if it makes you dependent, afraid, or doubtful of yourself. So instead of asking who's speaking, learn to ask, is this right for me? And let your quiet, inner clarity answer. No one can live your life for you, and no one is responsible for your path but you. 10. Ordinary actions. Repeated daily is an extraordinary life. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly becomes the best version of themselves. There is no miracle that transforms doubt into discipline overnight. No glory ever comes from random, inconsistent actions. Every extraordinary life you admire, whether it belongs to a philosopher, a leader, an artist, or an athlete, was built on simple things, quietly repeated every single day. We tend to overvalue moments of breakthrough, yet underestimate the power of persistence. We marvel at someone's success without seeing the thousands of mornings they woke up on time, the hundreds of distractions they rejected, and the moments they kept going when no one was watching. That's not luck, that's discipline. It's the understanding that every great transformation starts with a small, deliberate act. Stoicism isn't about grand achievements. It's about doing the right thing every day, regardless of mood, outcome, or recognition. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations to inspire future generations. He wrote to remind himself to stay true to small principles, from the way he spoke, to the way he remained silent, to how he maintained clarity in chaos. Because he understood, who you become is not defined by what you say you want, but by what you quietly do every day. Maybe waking up early today doesn't change anything. Writing for 5 minutes, reading a chapter, doing light morning exercise, turning off your phone an hour before sleep. Each of these may seem small, mundane, repetitive to the point of boredom, but these small actions, maintained with discipline, create a lifestyle, and your lifestyle forms your identity. Conversely, skipping these small habits creates a pattern of its own. Each time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," you train yourself to delay. Each time you choose ease, you drift further from growth. And if it continues long enough, you won't even notice how far you've moved from your original path. The extraordinary doesn't come from doing big things. It comes from remaining loyal to small, meaningful acts when no one is watching, when there's no applause, when nothing is guaranteed. That is true power. And if you want a different life, you don't need motivation. You just need to start right now with one small action and repeat it with presence. Every day, not perfectly, just consistently. 11. Most people are too busy with themselves to judge you. There's a quiet fear that stops many from even starting. The fear of judgment. The fear that others will say you're not good enough, laugh when you get it wrong, or question you for stepping outside the familiar. This fear is so subtle that it makes you hesitate to post a thought, speak your mind, change your lifestyle, or even live honestly. But the truth is, most people aren't thinking about you as much as you think. They're not tracking your every move, analyzing every word, or replaying your past mistakes. They're too busy with their own lives, with their worries, pressures, inner conflicts, and wounds still healing. And when they do notice you, it's often fleeting, nowhere near long enough to define who you are or to alter your path. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "We worry so much about what others think, yet they're busy thinking about themselves." This seemingly simple line holds a powerful freedom. When you realize that others' gaze doesn't weigh as much as you thought, you begin to live by your own values, to learn from failure without shame, to sit in silence without fear, and to move forward even without applause. Remember, the harshest judgment often comes from within, not from those around you. And if you don't learn to release the need for universal approval, you'll live in an invisible prison where every step is shackled by nameless fear. In the end, you only have one life, and it would be a waste to live it as though constantly being watched. Choose what's right, live honestly, and walk firmly. The whispers out there, if they exist, will fade like wind. But you remain with yourself. 12. Everything starts from within you. We're often told that to change our lives, we must change our job, environment, relationships, or circumstances. But as we grow older and move through life's turbulence, we begin to see every lasting change, every real transformation begins in one place within yourself. Not because the outer world is unimportant, but because if your inner world is still in disarray, no matter where you go, everything will feel just as chaotic. You can move to a new city, but if you carry procrastination, fear, unresolved anger, the new place is just a backdrop for the same old script. You can enter a promising relationship, but if you haven't healed within, you'll repeat old wounds and call it fate. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And that's not just advice, it's the foundation of self-mastery. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the most important task is not to control the world, but to control our response to it. When your mind is clear, you're not easily swayed by others' emotions, not shaken by circumstances, not lost in noise. When your inner world is steady, you don't need to prove, to please, or to compete with showmanship. You simply are clear, calm, and grounded. And from that inner strength, everything else begins to shift. The relationships you attract change. The way you work changes. The way you face hardship changes. Not because the world treats you differently, but because you've chosen to treat yourself differently. The world outside is just a mirror reflecting your inner state. When the root transforms, the surface follows. So if you want to begin again, to live with more meaning, to find stillness in a chaotic world, don't rush to look outward. Turn inward. Start with yourself, because that's where everything truly begins. I used to live in a constant state of waiting for something outside me to change. A better opportunity, someone who understood me more, a day with less pressure. But then I realized I was the one who needed to change first. Life doesn't get easier, people don't become kinder, and time won't slow down so you can prepare. But when you change your perspective, change your choices, and change your reactions, you begin to see. The world is no longer an enemy, but a neutral ground, a place where you can forge resilience and live by your values. I'm not saying this journey is easy. It's full of struggle, doubt, and solitude. But it's a path truly worth walking. Because in the end, you can't control everything, but you can always control how you live day by day, action by action, thought by thought. And from there, you shape your own life. If these reflections helped you see yourself more clearly, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next content. And wherever you are on your journey, if you still choose to keep moving forward, then you are no longer the person you were yesterday. See you in the next video.